Ingratitude and chapter 14, Greed. Ingratitude is only three. It's obviously, you can talk for hours about ingratitude and the importance of being grateful. And but here's just a brief summary of it. And chapter 14 is about greed, which is a bit longer, but inshallah we'll cover it. Again, Jazakallah for turning up regularly to the classes. Yes, 102. Ingratitude. So, na shukri, we know that shukr, when we speak in Urdu or Punjabi, we call it na shukri. Definition of ingratitude, and then a verse of the Quran, and then a hadith about it, and then a story if possible, and then the causes and cures. Okay. Definition of ingratitude: failing to thank Allah Almighty for His blessings and neglecting them is ingratitude. Blessed verse, Allah Almighty stated in the glorious Quran, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And remember when your Lord proclaimed, if you are grateful, I will henceforth give you more. And if you are ungrateful, my punishment is henceforth severe. So if you are لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ, if you do shukr, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, मैं तुम्हें ज़्यादा दूंगा. Okay? So ज़्यादा means more. We use that word a lot in Urdu and Punjabi, don't we? So in the Arabic, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you do shukr, I will give you ज़्यादा, I will give you more. وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ, if you are ungrateful, then my punishment is severe. Blessed hadith. Concealing blessings is ingratitude. Sayyidina Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu narrated that the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared, whoever is not thankful for a small blessing will not be thankful for a large one. And whoever is not thankful to other humans will not be thankful to Allah Almighty. Mentioning the blessings of Allah is also gratitude, and not mentioning them is ingratitude. Okay. So there were a lot of things in that hadith. There were three things in that hadith. So thank Allah for the small things, and you'll be grateful for the big ones as well. And if you're not grateful to other human beings, how are you going to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So being thankful means mentioning the blessings of Allah ta'ala. Allah ka shukr, I've got this, Allah has given me that. And not mentioning your blessings is ingratitude. But remember, we did discuss hadith before. If you think the people in front of you are jealous, are going to be jealous and they're going to try harming you, then maybe it's wiser to not mention your blessings. If they're the kind of people who are not going to be happy, who are not sincere, loyal friends, and they're not going to be happy for you, rather they're going to directly or indirectly harm you, then it might be better to not express your blessings. A warning about ingratitude: not thanking Allah Almighty for His blessings by neglecting them is forbidden, haram, and leads to hell. So nashukri is haram. Ingratitude is haram. Ingratitude is also one of the reasons for losing blessings, hence why every single Muslim must abstain from it. Okay. Story, ingratitude even in poverty. I'll skip the first 5 lines, which is the reference. I'll go to once there was a Are you following me? Once there was a profusely, abundantly blessed man who possessed immense material riches, but later in his life he lost everything. Thereafter he praised and glorified Allah Almighty. His only remaining possession was a mat to lie on, yet he never stopped glorifying Allah Almighty. Another wealthy man inquired, what are you thanking Allah Almighty for now? I am thanking Allah Almighty for those blessings that I would be unable to purchase, even with the entire earth's fortunes. Yet I already own them, he answered. And what are they? The man inquired. The poor man replied, do you not see your tongue, your hands, and your feet? These are tremendous blessings from Allah. So even the blessing of Iman. And so this was someone who was rich and he lost everything. It's very hard, for people who have a blessing. Some people who are not used to blessings in the first place, they can do without them and they're not that bothered. They might not be that stressed. But having a blessing, being rich, having a really good job, having a fancy lifestyle, and then losing that can be very hard to come to terms with. A lot of people just get depressed. Even though they've lost a higher position, they've not become homeless. They've still got enough to live a decent life, but just because they perceive themselves as a failure, or they're used to that. Even if someone was on like a 10,000 a month wage, which is more than decent, and he's coming out to 5,000, okay, which even that's decent. But just because it's not as much as he would, some get depressed just over that. So this is an example of, so it's hard, even if you lose what you had, trying to come to terms with that, having sabr and having patience, and just looking at the things that you still have, okay, and not being desperate to regain that prior wealth or that prior status or that job, or whatever. So sabr and patience. Three causes and cures for ingratitude. The first cause of ingratitude is having the habit of being impatient. Expressing grief in every sort of adversity leads to ingratitude. On occasions, due to this fatal disease, some people even lose their faith by uttering blasphemous comments. So sometimes ingratitude or impatience can make a person a kafir as well. Some people, some Muslims will, in times of calamity, they start, ma'azallah, arguing with God. And we know this is common, we hear this, don't we? Or, ma'azallah, the atheist argument of, why is there suffering? If there was a God, why is there suffering? You know, a ridiculous argument. So some Muslims would even say that, yeah, I didn't do anything bad, why did my mum die of cancer? Why did I lose my child? So arguing with Allah Ta'ala will take me out of the fold of Islam. So impatience and basabri, impatience and ingratitude can make a person leave a person out of the fold of Islam as well. So you've got to be very careful. What's the cure for this then? The cure for this is for you to inculcate a habit of being patient in troubles and tragedies. Contemplate about the millions of blessings that Allah Almighty has bestowed upon you, and discipline yourself, your nafs in this regard. Inculcate this Madani mindset inside yourself. If I am thankful for these favors, then inshallah my Lord will expand them and increase their benefit for me, inshallah. The second cause of ingratitude, Dawud on page 104, the second cause of ingratitude is a lack of trust in Allah Almighty. The lesser man trusts Allah Almighty, the more ungrateful he becomes. Individuals who are deprived of wealth and comforts are more likely to suffer from this fatal disease. What's the cure for this? The cure for this is for you to inculcate contentment inside your heart. Blame your ego for your sins and flaws. Securely strap all your present blessings with the rope of gratitude and pray that you never lose them. Okay? The third cause of ingratitude is audacity in disobeying Allah Almighty. Persistently committing sins causes a man to become audacious, shameless. Subsequently, one day he will utter words of discontent and possibly even blasphemy, which will ultimately thrust him face down into the dark valleys of disbelief. What is the cure for this? The cure for this is for you to regularly frighten yourself of hell's torments and be concerned about your afterlife. Furthermore, whilst feeling the secret predestination of Allah Azza wa Jal, never cease to be concerned about the stability of your faith and always supplicate to Allah Ta'ala for the preservation of your faith. So the three causes, the first cause was impatience, the second one was a lack of trust, and the third one is being a sinner. These things can make a person ungrateful as well. Hadith I mentioned in Juma as well today. Okay, when you keep on looking at people who have got more than you, then you become ungrateful for the things that you have in front of us. So we don't appreciate the thing that we have in front of us, the blessings that we have at the moment, because we're too busy just looking at what we don't have. So one of the, as well as many other things, is that always looking at being obsessed with what other people have, looking at other people's cars and other people's driveways and their semi-detached or detached bungalows. It just makes you feel like you've got nothing. As well as making you jealous as well and make you obsessed with the dunya. There's a lot of other things, but you then don't appreciate and sometimes disrespect the blessing that we have in front of us. So being grateful is really a big blessing. Tawakkul, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is farz ayn, trusting Allah, and being discontent with not trusting Allah ta'ala is a major sin. It's a major sin. It's a major sin. Okay? So not trusting Allah Ta'ala is a major sin. And I'm sure one of our chapters is as well not trusting Allah Ta'ala. That may be one of our chapters that is coming up. Yeah, reliance on people. Chapter number 27, inshallah. So not relying on Allah, relying on people. That's one of our chapters. So we've done, alhamdulillah, with chapter 13, very briefly in gratitude, but obviously you can study a lot. There's so many things that can be said about the importance of shukr. Okay, and shukr is whenever we receive a blessing, receive it with humility and don't forget who gave you the blessing. So ingratitude is when you receive have a blessing and you forget who gave it you. So look at the mun'im, look at the blesser, forgetting the blesser when you get blessings. That's ingratitude. So whenever you get a blessing, don't forget where it comes from. Don't forget that it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't attribute blessings to yourself. Well, I've got it because I worked hard and then I was smart and I used my brain and that's why I got this job and I've got to where I am. No one's helped me. No, always remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always attribute your good things to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and any flaws and any weaknesses and defects, say that, well, this is because of my nafs. These sins or this azab or this problem that I'm having is because of my nafs. So that's adab, attributing our blessings and our successes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attributing our flaws to ourselves. Let's so that we can cover two topics today. Let's go on to the topic of greed. This is a bit longer, and I'll try skipping certain passages wherever appropriate. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So greed, the definition and a verse of the Quran Kareem and a hadith and any other valuable points. Greed can be good as well. Greed is not always bad. It can be good as well, and we'll study that inshallah. Different types of greed. Definition of greed. Greed is an excess of desires. So in other words, being obsessed with something. Disliked greed is the desire to possess the blessings of others, other people, despite having received your own share. Or it is the state of always remaining unsatiated, unsatisfied, whilst constantly wishing for more. You just want more all the time. The Arabic word for greed is hirs with a sad, and the word for a greedy individual is haris. Hirs is greed, and anyone who is greedy is called a haris person. Okay. Contrary to popular belief, greed is not only related to money and wealth. When we think of greed, we usually think of money and wealth. In fact, greed is an excessive obsession with absolutely anything, even things other than money. Anyone who desires additional wealth will be considered greedy for money, avaricious. Anyone who desires excessive food, gluttony, will be considered greed for food. That's called gluttony. Anyone who desires further good deeds will be considered greedy for good deeds. That's a good greed. Whilst anyone who desires to increase his burden of sins can be labeled as greedy for sins. Turn over. I'll skip that reference. I'll go straight to the quote. Greed and coveting can be associated with food, clothing, residence, possessions, money, respect, fame, in fact, absolutely anything. So greed is not just money. You can be greedy for fame. Someone can be greedy for cars, greed, whatever. It's an obsession. Greed is just an obsession with anything, and you can be obsessed with absolutely anything, can't you? So, blessed verse. Allah Almighty declares in the Holy Quran, and undoubtedly amongst all people you will definitely find them the most desirous of life to live in this world. And amongst the polytheists, one group desires to live 1,000 years. And the granting of such a long life will not keep that group away from punishment. And Allah is observing their evil deeds. Again, I'll skip the reference and I'll go to the explanation. Zoroastrians, fire worshippers. Zoroastrians, fire worshippers, are a type of polytheists, mushrik, whose ritual greeting is, may you live 1,000 years. May you live 1,000. When they meet each other, but their way of saying salam or hello, may you live 1,000 years. Meaning Zoroastrians wish to live 1,000 years, yet the Jews excelled them with the desire to live even longer than that. Yeah. And so 1,000 years is in that ayat. Allah Ta'ala mentions the word 1,000 in Arabic is alf, the number 1,000. It's the last word in the Arabic first line. Can you see the last word in the Arabic, the first line? What is it? Alfa, alfa. Alfa means 1,000 in Arabic. Mi'ah is 100. And straight after alfa, the first word on the second line is sana. Sana means years, 1,000 years. So Allah Ta'ala is saying in the Quran, there's people who wish to be alive for 1,000 years. This greed for a long life is not a healthy greed. Blessed hadith, human avarice, human greed. Sayyiduna Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu reports the Holy Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam remarked, if the son of Adam owned 2 valleys of gold, he would wish for a third. The stomach of the son of Adam can only be filled by the soil of his grave. So we're never satisfied. Ruling on greed, the acts, I've skipped the reference, the acts that greed can be associated with can sometimes be rewardable, at other times punishable, whilst at times they can be permissible, mubah. The Arabic word mubah, it means, in other words, neither rewarding if done, nor punishable if missed. If something is mubah, it means it's not good or bad. You don't get sawab for it. You're allowed. It's permissible. However, if someone did a permissible mubah deed with a commendable intention, then he will deserve spiritual reward. On the other hand, if he does a permissible act with a bad intention, then he will deserve punishment. Hence, there are fundamentally three categories of greed: good greed, bad greed, and permissible neutral greed, not good or bad. But that can swing either way. However, this third type will transform into commendable greed, good greed, if combined with a good intention, but condemned if combined with an evil, bad intention. Greed is not always detestable, greed is not always bad. The previous categorization of greed shows that greed is not always detestable, it's not always bad. In fact, whether it is praiseworthy or blameworthy, next page, depends on the object of your desire. It depends on what you're greedy for. To wish for an admirable object is praiseworthy, whilst desiring a detested bad object is frowned upon. Ultimately, we control the good or bad inclinations of our desires. First and foremost, we must be absolutely clear about what things are actually categorized as admirable so that we know what to wish for, as well as what things are actually condemned so that we know what not to wish for. To help with this, here is a brief explanation of the various categories of greed. So what things come under good greed, what things come under bad greed, and what comes under mubah. So again, greed can be good or bad, but you're only going to be able to channel and guide your greed if you've got knowledge of Shariat. Shariat tells you what is good and bad. You could be thinking something is good and then be greedy for it, but it's bad. What is admirable good deeds that are done for the pleasure of Allah Almighty will lead you to paradise. Okay? So greed for praying, salah, fasting, hajj. So being obsessed with namaz, being obsessed with hajj, being obsessed with charity, Quranic recitation, remembrance of Allah, zikr of Allah, durood upon the Prophet, pursuit of religious knowledge, kind treatment with relatives, kindness to others, and preaching, all are examples of recommended greed. If you're really that obsessed with these things, I want to get more sawab. And we should be like rushing. The Quran says rush to do good deeds, compete with each other, good competition, not jealous and arrogant competition, not belittling competition. We rush and compete with each other to do good deeds. So if your greed is for, and we should be greedy for good deeds, greedy for namaz, greedy for sawab, we should be. What is condemned greed? Okay, so I'll just summarize. The examples of this forbidden greed are greed for bribery, stealing, looking at forbidden things, fornication, sodomy, desiring fame, watching films and dramas, listening to songs and music, intoxication, gambling, backbiting, false accusations, tale-telling, swearing, negative assumptions, badguman, investigating and publicizing the flaws of other people, along with other sins. So anything that's a sin, if someone's obsessed with doing it, he's greedy for it, or he's got some sick desire to do it, he's greedy for sins. What greed is permissible or neutral? Mubah. Eating, drinking, sleeping, accumulating wealth, constructing a home, exchanging gifts, wearing fine quality or extra clothes are just a few examples of permissible acts. And therefore, to covet them, to be greedy for them is also permissible. Okay. A permissible, yeah, so if someone likes eating a lot, it's not necessarily haram. If someone likes accumulating wealth, we discussed that yesterday as well, in fact, on Wednesday, that if someone accumulates a lot of wealth and his intention is just for the sake of having a lot of wealth, then that's mubah, it's not good or bad. But if his intention in accumulating extra wealth is to be able to compete with other people and boast with other people, then that will become gunah, that's makruh tahrim. So it depends on the intention. Tika. If you turn over, page 110, the sort of half page that I skipped, just to summarize that page for you. Something that's mubah, like he just said, eating, drinking, sleeping, these are mubah things, right? This is something mubah, right? Now that can become, your eating can be an act of sawab. A mubah action can, depending on your intention, it can turn into an action. If you have breakfast with the intention that I'm going to use this breakfast to gain strength to be able to worship Allah Ta'ala calmly, without any headaches, without any weakness, then you're having that breakfast of yours is going to become like a sawab as well. You're getting sawab for that. If you're sleeping just for the sake of sleeping, whether it's mubah, it's not good or bad. If you're sleeping with the intention to gain strength and to become fresh so that you can recite the Quran or do something good, then you're sleeping, you may get sawab for that as well. So your intention can turn a mubah thing into sawab, but similarly, your intention behind sleeping or eating or drinking, these neutral actions, if it's bad, if it's doing those things to help you in a sin, then those things, you'll get gunnah for that intention as well. Page number 110, an example of permissible greed turning praiseworthy or blameworthy. Wearing perfume is a permissible act. However, you can acquire reward for this by making good intentions before applying it. Therefore, if anyone covets, desires the application of perfume with good intentions, then this is praiseworthy greed. The bottom four lines say, for example, when you wear perfume, you can intend to follow a sunnah, you can intend to respect a masjid, if applying before visiting a masjid. A third intention could be refreshing your mind. A fourth intention could be saving your Muslim brothers from being disturbed by unpleasant odors, etc. In which case, you will be accumulate religious reward for each intention. So you're putting itar on is not just one action, it's four actions because you've got four intentions. Okay? Allah Hazrat Rahmatullah says that you can do an act and have 40 different intentions behind it, in which case you're not doing one thing. If you can have 40 different intentions, possibly in putting atar on, then you will get the sawab for 40 different acts, depending on your intentions. Allah says He actually counts them all as well. Going to the masjid, you can come to the masjid with 40 different intentions. Depending on, if you make 5 intentions, you get a sawab accordingly. If you make 10, you can make up to 40 intentions. Most of the time, I'm on the top of 111. Imam Ghazali says you can have a bad intention in applying atar as well. Most of the time, when wearing perfume, the devil causes us to make incorrect intentions. What are possible? How can someone's intention be bad behind it? That if you wear perfume with the intention of wanting to be complimented, or in order to make the areas you walk through become fragrant, and consequently cause heads to turn and look at you and pay compliments, then these are condemnable intentions. Hence, it is also incorrect to have greed for wearing perfume with intentions such as these. Imam Ghazali says if you wear perfume with the intention of gaining public compliments, or you wear expensive perfume in order to make people realize that you are rich, then you are a sinner, and on the day of judgment your perfume shall stink worse than a dead carcass. So even putting itar on, if your intention is uh, wanting people to know that I've got a lot of cash, then it's a guna as well. Remember, with itar, just a side topic, itar, the Holy Prophet said, a woman's itar, this hadith, a woman's itar should be strong in color but soft in scent. So it shouldn't spread, but it should be like visible. The color, the stain should be visible. And a man's itar should be strong in scent and not very visible. Okay. That's a hadith park. So if a woman wears strong perfume deliberately in public with the intention, and the intention is, which she shouldn't anyway, because it's against the hadith. But if the intention is to be able to flirt with someone or attract the intention of a non-mahram man, then that would be an evil intention as well. But that was just a side thing because we're really talking about intentions, and greed can be good and bad. The itar thing is, just a side topic. There's a very long story here. You can read in your own time. The snake that laid golden eggs. The snake that laid golden eggs. Um, Teak. 1, 2, 3. It goes all the way to page 115. It's a bit like what's that story in English that we used to the goose. What was it? Something to do with the goose. There's a story like that, wasn't it? Whether that story is true or not, like even the Masnavi or Maulana Room, Sufia are allowed to, scholars, you're allowed to make up a story. Like Arabic came and he said this to someone. So if there's an Islamic moral in that, so lying for an Islamic moral. And there's a lot of stories like that in the Masnavi of Maulana Room. A lot of the stories are made up, but because there's some Sufi story at the end of it, it's permissible. So whether that story is true or if it's made up, either way, there's a really big lesson about being obsessed with mal, obsessed with gold, and abandoning your family, abandoning your wife and kids, and not bothering about their deaths. Some people in that, the moral of that story, he actually allows he becomes so blinded by gold and silver that he's not even bothered about the death, I think, of his children or his wife and his family members. You can get people who are greedy to that level, where the mum dad dies, ठीक है वो इतना अफसोस नहीं होता जितना they're blinded by wealth. So you can be blinded to that extent where you're not even bothered by the death of a child or something. So greed, there is an extreme level of greed where people will forsake all of their rishte. In this day and age, it seems like we're talking about greed. Brothers, biological brothers, are jealous of each other. Sisters are jealous of each other. I think a wife can be jealous of a husband. A husband can be jealous of his wife. Parents, it seems like parents sometimes are jealous of their kids. It seems kids are sometimes jealous of parents. It seems jealous or angry or wanting their wealth. And so that is a story about how someone just allows his whole family to be killed by a snake, which was constantly biting everyone and killing, and it was a venomous one. And people are telling him, look, just get rid of the snake, kill it. And he's saying, well, it lays a golden egg. If I kill it, I'm not going to get the eggs. So it's one by one killing his whole family, and he refuses to kill the snake just because of the mal that he's getting from it. So he's blinded and he allows his family and everyone to die and things like that. Intensify, yeah, these are the last 2 pages. Intensify, if you turn to page 116, our final page 116. I want to read halfway through. Missing salahs as well as obligatory fasts, swearing, slandering, suspecting, backbiting, tale-telling, spying on other people's deficiencies, publicizing other people's flaws, lying, false promises, and lawful seizure of somebody else's valuables, bloodshed, hurting someone without a lawful reason, not repaying debts, not returning borrowed items, abusing Muslims, using other people's possessions without their consent, despite their disapproval, drinking alcohol, gambling, stealing, fornicating, watching films and dramas, listening to songs and music interest, based deals, disobeying parents and hurting their feelings, breaching trust, looking at obscene things, women imitating men, men imitating women, unveiling pride, arrogance, jealousy, showing off, begrudging another Muslim inside your heart, violating an Islamic law due to anger, desiring fame, stinginess, and self-conceit, are just some of the sins that our Muslims are involved in nowadays with a terrible level of audacity. Audacity means shamelessness. What are the 3 cures for saving yourself from the greed of sins? Number 1, recognize sins. You have to recognize evil to be able to avoid evil. In order to acquire knowledge about various sins and their consequences, please keep the company of staunch Sunni scholars and muftis. The books and booklets published by Maktabat al-Madinah Dawat Islamic Publication Department will also help with this. Number 2, contemplate about the perils of sins. A sinner invites the wrath of Allah Almighty, moves far from paradise, close to hell, inflicts problems amongst himself, pollutes his heart, disturbs his 2 recording angels, displeases Allah Almighty and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, violates, oppresses other humans, whilst disobeying the Creator of all the universes, etc. And number 3, do not be fearless of a terrible death. So always be afraid of a terrible death. Relentlessly committing sins without repentance is one of the causes of an awful death. So the 3 cures to save ourselves from being greedy: recognizing sins, again, acquiring knowledge, being educated, contemplating about the harms of sins, and always worrying about a bad death. Okay. So being in the company of staunch Sunni scholars and muftis. When it comes to our deen, when it comes to education, I've said it before, Jummah khutbahs and our programs are not enough. You really get educated when you have classes like these. Sitting with an ustad is where you really, really, in depth study things in depth. And Dawat Islami's books especially focus on Islam. They're not just, this routine sort of customary books. They go deep into things that are farz ain for us and the harams that we have to avoid as well. Feel free to make any comments or ask anything on this issue. Alhamdulillah, we've covered chapters 13 and 14, Ingratitude, Nashukri, and greed.
You just mentioned eating excessively is mubah. The video you put yesterday, Sim, you said the person, I think he got when he ate some dates. Now, I remember he got punished for it, or the desire, fulfilled his desire. That was mubah as well, wasn't it? Because he explained. That was a different situation, wasn't it?
The awliya, he was a wali. He was a wali of a high rank.
So is that for just like a specific person? No, but he put it upon himself, isn't it? He put it on him that he's going to stop eating the dates.
He promised Allah Ta'ala.
So he made like a manat.
There was that as well. What by Yasir saying? No, it's a good question. What by Yasir saying is right as well. I think in yesterday's story, he made a promise to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala that I'm not going to do something.
That's right.
So I think it was him breaking a promise. And the other thing, even if he didn't make a promise, with the awliya, because they don't, it's just like a different level. Sometimes they will get punished for something that we would not get punished for. And that punishment, you're punished with Allah Ta'ala punishing someone who's really, really close to him, is because the level's higher for them. They're not expected to even have any desire of the nafs and nafs at all. So something which isn't a guna for us, they would treat it like a guna. How would we explain that? The rules get tougher the higher you climb, the closer, you get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is, yeah.
Another one, you said constantly fear about the end of death.
Yeah.
When you constantly think about death, it obviously puts you down. When it puts you down, you can't really. Constantly thinking about death, it can put you in a depression.
That might happen if you don't think about anything else and just death. Islam tells us to think about 50 different things. One of them is death.
How would you balance it? You're going to think about death. What is it? I don't know how many times a day.
You don't have 20 times. There's a hadith sharif that says anyone who thinks about death 20 times a day will rise with the shaheeds. But at the same time, you've got to think about your hukuk, you've got to think about your family, you've got to think about rizqi halal, you've got to think about being nice to the people around you. So you can balance all those things. It is possible to balance. Islam doesn't just say, stop everything you're doing, sit at home and then think about death. That might lead to, if that does lead to him getting stressed or something, well, that's because if someone's getting stressed whilst acting upon Islam, it's because Islam has given him 10 things, it's given him a package of 10 things to do, or it's given him something to do with the rules and with the requirements, and he's just taking 1/10 of that thing, and he's ignorant or deliberately avoiding the other 9, and he's just focusing too much on one, and that piece is only going to work when he adds the other 9. So he's just focusing too much on one. So in fact, there's I can't remember if it was Hazrat Umar Farooq who said this or Hazrat Usmani Ghani. I'm sure 99% is Hazrat Usmani Ghani, but I'm 100% of the actual statement. Hammud dunya zulmatun fil qalb wa hammul akhirah nurun fil qalb. Concern, fikr for the akhirat actually enlightens your heart, and fikr for the dunya, it blackens your heart. So actually, fikr akhirat enlightens, and even if you look at the Anbiya Kiram, look at the Awliya Kiram who we are, whose lives we're studying. These are people who did mujahada. These are people who were thinking about death and crying. Were they depressed? Were they depressed? They were leaders. They were judges. They were leaders of communities, of countries. They did jihad as well. They motivated if they were depressed, how did they motivate entire communities? How did they bring hundreds of people towards Islam? How did they make people good? So they weren't depressed people. Awliya weren't depressed people. So the fikri akhirat, a certain, I guess it's something that a person has to experience to sort of know, because you're right, in our society, we think about just worrying. When we think the concept of worrying is just like a sort of a sad, or being sad in our modern society. It's hard to fathom the concept of, well, sadness can be good. Sadness can actually build your confidence. Sadness can actually make you stronger. Sadness can make you more, can drive you. Sadness is a good catalyst to push you. But that's hard to understand in this material obsessed dunya was. But if you, when you're in your deen, if you study your deen, sadness which is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that actually drives you to do other things. So we've never, in deen, balance it. You use the word balance yourself. मौत की फिक्र भी करनी है, लेकिन वो एक दूसरे का भी ख्याल भी रखना है, रिज़्क़ हलाल भी कमाना है. Allah Ta'ala has given us akal, so help people around you and help your family. Do all of those things.
But what if you are greedy for wealth,
Yeah.
but not to show off, but just for you to have an easy life? Let's just say you've come from a hard-to-do background.
Yeah. That seems mubah. Like you said, having a lot of wealth can be mustahab. If your intention is that I want loads of wealth because I want to help madrasas and ulama and poor people, then it's good to be extra rich. The niyat that you said, I just want an easy life. That sounds like that mubah intention, not good or bad. It's permissible.
It's not to show. Yeah. Not very.
If it was showing off or boasting, then that would come into the najais category. And then either change the intention, and if you can't change the intention, if you're struggling, then cut down. The niyat you mentioned is either going to fall under the mubah category, the permissible one, where you don't get, if something's mubah in Islam, you don't get sawab for doing it, you don't get azab for doing it either. It's going to fall in that, or it's going to fall in the good category, where if you're earning more than what your necessity is, and your niyat is, so I don't have to take debts from people, I don't depend on people, and I can worship with a calm mind, and because when you've got financial stress, you're not going to pray your namaz properly. You're going to be worrying about your finances even during all your namaz. So I want to I want to be able to worship calmly and with an empty mind, empty heart, and non-stress. I don't want to be stressed during ibadat. That's a good intention.
I was going to say, is there on the topic of the brother talking about death, I think there's a dua as well in there, which I don't know in Arabic, but you requesting, a good end, good death from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I suppose if you do think about death, you can include that prayer as well, which
I don't. There's hadith park. There is a hadith park as well. Don't ask Allah for death. Don't wish for death based on just because of worldly problems. And I think Allah just mentioned makruh tahrimi somewhere. Don't wish for death due to worldly struggles. How wishing for death is permissible if it's based on, if there's fitna and it's hard for me to save my deen. Someone's really worried about, I'm worried I'm going to end up becoming a badbazar or a kafir. So wishing for death based on, because you're afraid of falling into religious turmoil is permissible. But the Prophet ﷺ said clearly, do not wish for death. He said, if you want to, if you're that stressed, then do dua in this way. Oh Allah, keep me alive for as long as being alive is good for me. Give me death when death is good for me. If you want to do dua, then do it. If keep me alive for as long as, these are the words of the hadith, this is the dua that the Prophet ﷺ said. Well, keep me alive for as long as living is good for me, and give me death when death is good for me.